And I think just remember that goals without action are just dreams, and goals with action become direction. Hi guys, welcome back to Her Career, Her Way. Today is episode 6, and we're going to be talking about setting goals. I think this is a perfect episode for honestly any time of the year, but for me right now, I'm going into my last year of university, and so I thought this was a really fitting time to kind of start thinking about the goals that I want to set for this year and kind of the year in front of me, because as this is my last year, I'm looking for jobs and things like that. But I also am kind of enjoying the last chapter of this era that I'm in before I go into my working girl era. So I thought I'd bring this episode up. I also think it's just really good for you to know when you're going into your 20s and just when everything is a little bit confusing to have to start thinking about kind of what things you want in life and what goals you might want to achieve, be related to your career or not. I think it's really important because it just kind of sets a trajectory and a sense of direction and gives you that kind of comfort over where you're headed, even if you don't know. So today's episode, we're going to unpack on how to set goals that actually work, how to overcome those mental blocks that keep us stuck, and how to bridge the gap between what we say and what we actually do. And this is so fitting for our mission in this podcast to really help people in their 20s navigate their careers and bridge that gap between what we want and where we are. I think the main conflict with goals is that we don't always achieve them. And this can be seen with New Year's resolutions where we get really ambitious and we want to do this, and that, and then we don't do anything by the end of the year. And I also think that having that kind of pressure of a New Year's resolution is a lot. So some of the things that I wanted to break down before we even go into setting goals is why we kind of struggle with goals. And I think one of them is a lack of clarity. We want that dream job or we want that dream car or whatever it is, but we don't define what it actually looks like. And I think this stems from another thing of having unrealistic expectations. And so we've all heard of manifesting, where I'm going to manifest that I get this and this and that. Without a plan, it's kind of just daydreaming. And Johansson, actually a psychologist, found that multi-sensory imagery, unlike just simple visualization, actually helps to activate the broad neural network that is functional equivalence. And this means it's engaging in the hippocampus for memory, the practical lobe for spatial awareness, and the prefrontal cortex for problem solving. This is a richer brain activation that not only mirrors the real performance, but also strengthens focus, emotional regulation, and resilience while facing challenges. So instead of kind of just basically visualizing, I would use kind of all your senses. So for example, I see myself in the next year having my dream job in New York City. That's a visualization. But you go a step further and be like, and I visualize kind of being with friends, hearing their laughter, hearing my coworkers come down the hallway, and we're chatting and we're getting our work done, and I can smell the fresh paper that just printed off of the printer. Just like getting really, really, really specific and concrete in what you want, I think will really help bring that imagination to life and also create a certain plan of where you are, how you're going to get there, what it's going to look like. So when you imagine the activity in detail, this actually has similar brain activity while you're actually performing. And so I think it brings those problems that may arise, it will be easier to solve because you've already visualized in detail how you're going to do it and how you're going to react. And so I think it can be a confidence booster and also help when dealing with those challenges. And then another reason why I think a lot of our goals fail is that we have a fear of failing. And so when we talk ourselves out of trying, like I'm not good enough, as we talked about in the first episode, or I don't have what it takes, and we kind of use all these excuses and doubt ourselves, that's also when our goals fail because we feel like they're unachievable. And so one of a personal story that I wanted to tell is that one of my goals has been to run specifically a 10K, which we'll see. But you see how I just did that myself? It's like I have a fear of not being able to do it. And so I'm already second guessing myself on whether I can even achieve that. And so it feels impossible, like that 10K, maybe not for everyone, but for me, it's a lot because I'm just starting out running. I've done the 5K and that was good, but the 10K is a lot. It's double. And so I'm scared. I'm fearful that I'm not going to be able to do it because it's a big goal. But once I kind of start to create a plan and show up, like twice a week, I'm going to run. I'm going to use the Nike Run Club app and I'm going to follow the plan consistently. And then I tend to prove myself wrong. I didn't even think I could do an 8K. I did an 8K twice. That's steps in the right direction. And having a plan made the goal real and feel tangible and feel like I can do this. And each day, every single day that I run and show up, I think to myself, wow, I can do this. It just puts a little bit more confidence. So I think it's really important to also have a plan while you have a goal. Another thing might be value misalignment because you kind of feel unmotivated, especially when the goal isn't yours. So whether it's your parents, your college counselor, whatever, or society telling you what you should want instead of what you do want. And this is where in that other episode of identifying your passions is really important, because if you set a goal that you're not really passionate about or something that you don't feel is aligned with what your mission is in life, it's going to be really hard to have that motivation and that drive to actually fulfill it. And then, as I said, I think poor planning also helps to not be able to achieve those goals. And so this is having kind of no steps, no systems, no accountability in place. Also having way too many goals at once, like trying to do everything and finishing nothing. I know the saying, you try to do way too many things and you just end up doing, you end up doing nothing. Yeah, it's like we as humans want to achieve so much. We want to be known for some things as well. But the saying is, you can have everything you want, just not all at once. And so I think that's really true, is that you can have things. You just have to know that you're not going to get it all at the same time. You are going to have to work on something and then the other thing might come up, or you'll finish one thing and then something else will pop up. And so I think it's really important to dream big, but also have smaller steps and really narrow in to what you want and how you can attain that in, a realistic time frame. And I think this also kind of leads into that behavior intention gap that I learned in one of my consumer behavior classes, which is this discrepancy of what consumers say they will do, their intentions or their attitudes, and what they actually do, which is their actions. And so, for example, a person might say that they're concerned about the environment, which is the attitude, but then they'll buy products with excessive packaging, which is their behavior. And eventually, they normally change their attitude to align with their behavior rather than changing the behavior to align with the attitude. And so I think this is really fitting with goals, is that you have that intention and you have that attitude, but then you behave differently because you might not have a plan or because you have too many things going on or the fear of failing or whatever. And then you end up kind of not changing your behaviors. You actually change your attitude towards the behaviors so that you can lessen that cognitive dissonance. And so I think it's really just important to be aware of our tendencies as humans and what we do versus what we say we do, which is why actions are always more powerful than words. And then last but not least is not having a why for your goals. So why do I want to, run a 10K? Or why do I want this dream job in this consultancy company? I think it's really important to understand that, because that gives you the kind of the spark. It gives you the motivation, and it can help with that discipline if you know that why. So for example, why I want to go into the fashion industry. Well, I love the creative aspect. I get to understand consumers. I get to understand market trends. I get to see how it aligns, how fashion aligns with kind of the ever-changing environment that we live in. But I also get to bridge analytics and see kind of what is working and how I can inform the past things that have been happening to the future. And it's just really cool. I love how it's so dynamic. You also get to work with a lot of people and you can be creative, which I love. So I think it's really important to have that why and really focusing and honing in onto your why rather than focusing in onto other people's whys. Right now the consultancy jobs are really sparking, and as a business student, you hear that a lot, like, oh my gosh, have you applied to this company? Have you applied to that company? Oh my gosh, you haven't heard of this? Well, you should have. Like, how do you not know it? Well, maybe it's because I'm not interested in that. But I am interested in this, and this is when this time frame is, or whatever. And so I think it's really important to kind of cut out that noise and really just focus on your why, not anybody else's why. And so now that we kind of know, I guess, why goals fail, I really wanted to pinpoint the process of how to overcome that conflict and that, kind of spark. And so realizing that goals aren't just motivation alone, but they're about habits, systems, as well as self-awareness. And I think that's really important to notice that it's not only about motivation. Yes, you can have passion. Yes, you can be motivated, but that will fade. And what you really need is discipline. And that comes from habits and self-awareness of this. So part of the reason why it's so hard to make long-term changes is that humans are wired to prioritize that instant gratification over delayed rewards. And this was seen by the University of Delaware, Amy Wolf. And this can be seen to like impulsive buying. Like you go into a supermarket and you have a list of groceries that you need to buy. And you're like, oh, I want to buy, broccoli, and I want to buy pasta, and I'm going to get tomatoes. And then when you're checking out, you see, gum, and then you see a drink and you're like, ooh, that looks nice and I want that. And you don't actually think about it like, do I really want that gum? Do I really need that drink? You just kind of get it because it's there. And then you leave the store and you're like, why did I buy like 10 items when I only needed these 3? And that's kind of the whole point of like that instant gratification over that delayed rewards. And so I think it's really important to kind of try and focus on the small steps and the small wins, because the rewards will come and you'll see them if you focus on the littler ones rather than that huge big goal that seems like, oh my gosh, like so far away. And then I really wanted to talk about habits. I think I touched upon this in the last few episodes a little bit, but I just wanted to I think it was really important for this episode to bring it in. So I wanted to kind of dive into it a little bit deeper. And so scientists actually say that habits emerge because the brain is constantly looking for ways to save effort. And conserving that mental effort is really tricky. And especially if we do it wrong, we might fail to notice something important. And in our cave days, if we did conserve mental energy in the wrong way, we could potentially die. There might be a predator hiding out in the bushes, or, in today's area, if we kind of are saving that mental effort and we're just crossing the street without looking because it's just in our habit, a speeding car might pull in onto the street. So this is where the basal ganglia comes in to determine when the habits need to take over. And this happens when you chunk the behavior together. Basically, like the beginning and ends, chunking converts that sequence of activities into an automatic routine, like kind of like putting a toothpaste on your toothbrush and things like that. And so this is where kind of the habit loop forms, where you have a cue and a reward. And the brain spikes to know if it's safe and then if everything has gone as planned. And this is all taken kind of from The Power of Habit, which is a wonderful book by Charles Duhigg. I think everybody should read it. I'm all about books. I have so many book recommendations to give. So if any of you want some more, let me know, especially if you have like a specific thing that you're looking for. I definitely have it. I think books are a great way to kind of develop yourself and your awareness. But we'll get into that later. So this is kind of where we understand that habit loop of cue, routine, and rewards, and how we can use that to kind of win and set those goals that can be achievable. So for example, I'm going to use like watching TV every night at 8 p.m. That's kind of my routine. And it's really important to kind of identify that. So is it boredom? Is it just wanting to distract myself? Is it that I'm tired and I don't want to think? Or is it because I'm just sad and lonely? So kind of write down each day kind of how you're feeling and what you're doing at the same time each day when you have that routine, and look at that and identify it's a cue. Like, this is at 8 p.m. every night. This is what I'm doing. And then kind of understanding the cues and why, because they can really give you insight into why your routine is happening. Then maybe start trying to change the routine, but keep the reward. The reward from watching TV might be relaxation. So if I change the routine for maybe reading a book or going for a walk or calling a friend or, whatever, that can kind of identify what you're actually craving, and you can swap that routine for something that maybe better serves you that day. So, for example, instead of automatically watching a movie at 8 p.m. to unwind, I can try to read a novel, call a friend, take a walk, like I said. And then if I'm still feeling satisfied after 15 minutes, well, then I found that healthier routine, and it gives me the same reward feeling. So basically, when you can name your cues and craving, you can gain that power to redesign your habits and your future. And this is really poignant with your career, because when you're planning for those little small steps, I think it's really important that your routine aligns with what you want and where you're going, so that you can establish these habits that actually bring you to where you want to go. So for example, I'm going to give one like applying to jobs. And so let's say you want a job in, I'm just going to use fashion because that's kind of where I go, but feel free to use another one. So let's say I want to do a job in fashion. I think it's really important to stay ahead of the trends. So I think what a routine that would be good to do is looking every day at just like one piece of news that kind of is affecting the fashion industry, or what could affect the fashion industry in the future. For example, like a possible recession happening. How is that going to change consumer spending? And so having that routine. So the cue can be every day at kind of 9 a.m. or whatever time you want. You are going to sit down at the kitchen table and you're going to go do your routine of 15 minutes looking on Vogue, looking on whatever to find something that impacts the fashion industry. It can be as little as 20 minutes. You're going to write that down. And as a reward, you're going to, feel like you've gained insight into what you need to do. Or that reward can feel like you've gained knowledge. Or you can use this kind of for an internship where you are, instead of at 3 p.m. when you're feeling that lull and you want to, go rest, or you want to, grab that, whatever you do at 3 p.m. when you're bored. Maybe swap it out for, I'm going to listen to a podcast so that I can feel rejuvenized and energized to, further out my day. And the cue can still be that 3 p.m. lull, but now you're actually doing something that motivates you. Now you're listening to that podcast. Now you're gaining that information and you feel energized to redo the work that kind of was a little bit mundane in the first place. So kind of just using that. I hope that kind of made sense. Another one is keystone habits. So there's habits like exercising or reading that can kind of create the ripple effects that build that confidence, focus, and discipline to help you with those other habits that may be a little bit more challenging. So it's really important to kind of build your day around those small wins, so then you can kind of create that momentum, other keystone habits. So O'Neill was the CEO, and he really turned around this company because he focused on one keystone habit, which was safety. And this created the ripple effects to address issues related to communication, training, and process improvement. And this really helped to improve the morale, efficiency, and overall the bottom line. And so I'm going to use reading as an example, where it helps to improve focus, reduce stress, and lead to more positive and a productive day. And most CEOs read about 52 books per year, so like a book per week. And so this can really help to enhance your knowledge too. And it just creates a ripple effect of you wanting to kind of go more, be more aligned on your journey, know what you want, see how other people have lived, and use those others' perspectives to kind of bridge the gap between what you want and where you are. And also learn new ideas and improve communication and enhance creativity. And I definitely want to do an episode about communication, because I think it's something that we feel is so innate to us, but is actually really, really hard to implement sometimes. And it's all about emotional intelligence too. And then thirdly, I think it's really important to kind of learn to prioritize. So identifying the 1 to 2 meaningful goals that align with your values. So for example, like creativity, independence, or helping others. And then breaking those down into tangible steps. So for example, if your dream is to work in a specific industry like consulting or something, revamp your resume first and then apply for internships or assistant roles that are about consulting and in that position that you're looking for. Network really intentionally. Look for events with consultants, where they're going, and kind of learn from them and kind of, try to push yourself into that industry a little bit. And then also I would definitely advise you to look about how consultants work or whatever industry you're going into, just so then you're kind of knowledgeable with the terms that they're using. And I think just remember that goals without action are just dreams, and goals with action become direction. So it's super important to also have that action with that dream. Now I'm going to move into what kind of positive events have transpired from this change. And so I think the really most important thing is that you don't need to know everything to just start. Just focus on the next step in your journey. And also, fear isn't a stop sign. It's a signal, and it often means that you care. It can also be the start of something super meaningful. And I know it's really uncomfortable to sit in that fear, but the unknown is really where growth lives. And I'm reading this book called 101 Essays That Will Change the Way You Think, and it is, my gosh, it is life-changing. And I know I probably say that a lot, and you're thinking, gosh, Hazel Ann, like, it's not life-changing. Chill down. But I swear to you, this has just opened my eyes to so many things. And Brianna West in this book says that fear has two invisible faces: flee or investigate. And I think that's really poignant. It's like you either choose to just go away, survival instinct, or you're like, I'm kind of curious into why this is. And that's where you kind of lead onto that next path about where you want to go. And it's okay to pivot. I mean, your college counselors and parents might have told you who they want you to be, but only you really know what's right for you. And I feel like I really wish I knew that piece of advice when I was younger, because I think I really did depend on them. I thought they did know what was right for me. And it was hard to kind of hear my own voice when you're that young. But if I had to do things differently, I probably would have explored more schools than I did. And I would have stepped out of my comfort zone a little bit. It's okay. I'm where I'm meant to be. And I think it's just taught me that I really do need to listen to my own voice, and you have that gut instinct that you know something is right. Now, again, it's really important to listen to that gut instinct and also bridge that reality gap. So kind of the takeaways from this episode is that I really want, when you're creating goals, for you to visualize your dreams, whether that be on a Pinterest board, journal, whiteboard. Just get it out of your head. Split it into categories. Remember that your career is only a subsection of your life. So really focus on everything. Who are your friends going to be? What is your travel life going to be? I think it's really important, because you are not only your career, you are a person who is growing and developing, and that adds so much into every single aspect of your life. And while you're visualizing, really, really be concrete. Think about all your senses. What is it going to hear like? What is it going to smell like? Who you're going to be? What you're going to see, hear, whatever. Taste, I guess. Maybe just leave that for food or something. But you get the idea, because that will help you kind of understand in detail what you want, so that you can start going on and planning. And that's where you get into step 2 of breaking it down. What are the real doable steps? And what can you do to start this week? If you want to run, what can you do? Download the Night Run Club app. Or if you want to read a book, find a book that inspires you. Do something like that. What can you do today or this week? And then third, I think it's really important to find your why. Why this path? Why does this energize you? And keep that close to you on your journey while you're fulfilling these goals. And then when you're planning for the unknown, such as, choosing a career or wanting to, not do this anymore, cool, but how much can you actually do with that? So for example, if you want to become a CEO and you don't have any leadership skills, well then find ways you can develop these skills first. Read a book about becoming a leader. Take a class in leadership. Be a leader in your group presentations. And if you want to become like an entrepreneur, then maybe pitch that idea to friends and family, get their feedback, kind of learn how entrepreneurs have worked, see how many times they've failed, so you get that real sense of the holistic idea rather than just the success, because that's the instant gratification and you're looking for kind of the delayed rewards when you see that whole picture. Another example could be leaving a job without having any financial means to do so. And I think this is really important, because At the end of the day, we do need money to survive. Money isn't everything, but it is something that's really important. And unfortunately, we can't all just leave our jobs for a dream one if we don't have the financial means to do so. So my advice kind of would be to find something that makes money that's constant and consistent. Save and plan to see how much you actually ideally need to move on to another job, and see how risky it is. And again, we really only see people that succeed rather than their failures. And I think it's really important to just remember that, because most entrepreneurs do fail at least once or twice before they succeed, or, some don't, unfortunately. And that's just the reality of this. I'm a little bit of a realist as well as a dreamer, so bear with me here. I don't mean to be pessimistic, but I think it's Libra in me where I'm just a little balanced. And then step 5 is tracking your habits for 3 days. What are you defaulting to comfort, and what's your cue? Kind of just recognize that so that you can learn to be in the discomfort and grow from there. And then start really tiny. Just, do those small steps, and also talk it out. Share your goals with somebody. Get that accountability, because you don't have to do this alone. But I feel like we sometimes show up more for other people than we do ourselves sometimes. And so having that kind of accountability partner just keeps us a little bit in check of where we're going and where we're headed. And so you remember, like, oh yeah, I've told somebody I want to do this, and they have asked me about it, and why aren't I doing it? That's the real question if you aren't doing something, is why, and recognizing that too. So I guess I kind of just wanted to leave you with, if you're feeling overwhelmed by your own ambition, or you feel like you're not achieving your goals that you want to, you're not broken, you're just human. And really set goals that make space for who you are now and what you're becoming. Don't just kind of be in the hustle and be busy. Build with intention. Sit in that discomfort, because it is telling you that you're reaching your truest self. And also, feelings are temporary. So fear doesn't mean the desire to escape. It means that you're genuinely interested in becoming this person. You're just so scared because you're in the unknown. So that's kind of my advice for setting goals. I hope this has helped you. Let me know if you actually want kind of like a concrete step-by-step guide on how to set goals intentionally, and with examples too. If this episode was a little bit all over the place, I can definitely do that. Let me know kind of what topics are arising for you that you want a little bit more discussion on, or kind of understanding the why it happens. I'm always down to kind of look at psychology or research articles or whatever, because it really just energizes me to know the why behind my tendencies, because that helps me grow as a person. And I hope you really gained a lot from this episode, and I'm looking forward to going on to episode 7 with you guys. So thanks so much for listening. I appreciate each and every one of you. And if you haven't done so, follow along Her Career, Her Way on Instagram as well as Spotify, because it helps me know that, we're building community. Feel free to leave any DMs that you have. And yeah, thank you so much for listening, and I'm excited to do another episode for you guys. Bye.